All right, we're live.
We're live.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the Home Service Expert. I'm with my main man, Kelly Schols, and he's an expert in leadership coaching, finance, and accountability. That's a good thing to be an expert in. You're based out of Mount Vernon, Washington, and you're the president of Kelly Schols Incorporated and the Blue Collar Success Group financial and accountability coach. You're a speaker, coach, and success mentor, author of the book Never Buy the Book, and the host of Never Buy the Book podcast. A debt-free millionaire by the age of 40. His passion is to teach others became his motivation. I'm sorry. And since 2014, he has been teaching financial workshops across the country. He inspires audiences of 1,000 with his simple and straightforward message. Here's how I did it, and you can too, Kelly. It's great to have you on, brother.
What's that?
I said it's great to have you on. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
So you've done a lot. Millionaire by 40. Tell me a little bit about your journey here to what got you to become debt-free and a millionaire by 40.
Well, it was all in the home service industries. So I started in the plumbing and heating business when I was 16 years old. I was working on a dairy farm. So I live in a small community 60 miles north of Seattle, rural, farming community. I was working on a dairy farm, and quite frankly, I didn't like it very much. So my girlfriend's dad owned a plumbing company and asked if I wanted to come to work for him. So at 16 years old, I said, heck yeah, and went to work for him. And at 16, I was what you call a cocky, arrogant kid. Thought I had it all figured out. And the first month I worked for him, I ended up wrecking a company vehicle.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I didn't make a very good impression. And he had a partner, and his partner's name was Steve Olson. And Steve didn't like me at first. Of course, I'm dating the partner's daughter. And then I wreck a vehicle. So after the first month, he didn't like me very well, but he gave me a job after being there about 6 months. It was probably one of the worst jobs somebody could ever have. A local hospital had a broken sewer line that had been dumping underneath it. And they asked me to go up there and spread lime. The sewer line had been broken for a year and dumping raw sewage under the hospital for a year.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I got to go up there. It was the middle of August. It was probably about 105 degrees in the crawl space. I had to pull on a full hazmat suit. And I went up there and spreaded lime for a week. Needless to say, Steve came to like me and became a big mentor in my life.
That's awesome. So you learned a lot about the financials. What do you do? So tell me about what's going on today. What do you do most of your time with other home service companies?
Well, I do some coaching and mentoring. I got different clients that I mentor personally. And when I'm doing it, I won't coach somebody on just business. When I coach somebody, I'm going to coach and mentor them personal and business, because the way I look at it is the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if your personal finances are in a shamble, your business finances are going to be in a shamble.
Yeah, you're right about that. I know a lot of people who they spend it as quick as they get it.
Yep.
And one of the things we've invested here is the Dave Ramsey program. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because no one's doing it. There's like 5 people that have actually enrolled in it, and we pay for the entire staff, 250 of us. And then obviously, like Michael McKellowitz, Profit First philosophy.
Yep.
And then I just read a book over the weekend called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It has a lot to do with, if you want to fix something, you got to track it. You should have a little notebook. Actually, it's kind of funny because I just bought a Get Fit log. Tracking your exercises. So,
so I'm actually a master financial coach through Dave Ramsey.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and when I first started coaching in the financial industry, or in the home service industries, doing financial coaching, was with the company that I owned. So I ended up over time bought Steve out of the company, worked for him for quite a while, and ended up buying him out. And then in 2014, my manager and I were looking for training to do, because we had become more of a training organization than anything. We're doing personal development, sales, customer service, everything. And we were talking about it one day, and he said, "Hey, why don't you go look at Dave Ramsey's stuff?" And at this point, I'd never known who Dave Ramsey was. So I'm already debt free. I'm a multimillionaire, but I didn't know who he was. So I dug into it, and I found out the principles that he teaches, Steve had actually taught me. And Steve didn't know who Dave Ramsey was either. But as I dug into it, it's like, hey, let's teach this to our employees. So we did a class in 2014. It was called Core Financial Wellness, based off of Ramsey's Financial Peace University. So we had 14 employees do it. At the time, they had $186,000 worth of debt, not including home mortgages. And in 8 weeks, we had that down to $140,000.
Wow. 8 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be good. Everybody could learn. This is something they don't teach in school, and I don't know why.
I have no idea why. So I kind of got excited about it. I started talking about it in different best practice groups. I was part of Service Nation Alliance, part of the Blue Collar Success Group, and started talking about it there. And it really got a lot of traction. So then I started speaking about it all over, about what I was doing and how I was doing it. And then I became more interested. So I went back to Nashville to Ramsey's headquarters and became an actual master financial coach. And since then, I sold the business in 2018 to my partners. And since then, before COVID hit, I was traveling around the country doing financial literacy classes for not only home service industries, but I had done some for the white collar industry as well. And what I learned with teaching the Ramsey stuff is, Dave Ramsey has 7 steps to financial freedom. One is $1,000 emergency fund. 2 is pay off all your debt. 3 is 3 to 6 months of expenses. 4 is pay off your house. 5, save for college. 7 is build wealth. And what I learned teaching it is, once you get past step 3, you lose a lot of people, because you do step 4, 5, and 6 all in conjunction with each other, which is pay off your house, save for college, build wealth, or save for retirement and build wealth. And when you get to that point, a lot of people can't fathom that. So I broke it down even smaller. And when I go out and I work with companies and their employees, I break it down to, I talk about the habits of money, the relationship of money, and the relationship between husband and spouse, how to get that $1,000 emergency fund, the difference between wants and needs, and how to budget. And if you can teach people those core principles, it can change their lives forever.
Yeah, well, it's crazy when you think about compound interest when you start young enough.
Yeah.
It's just incredible of a person that starts when they're 22 compared to 40. That 18 years of compounding. I had a Roth IRA that I put $300 a month into when I was 16. That's when I started.
Yeah.
And now in a Roth IRA, I have 280,000 in my Roth.
Well, I got a really good one for you. So I quit drinking 30 years ago. At 24 years old, I was in bad shape. So I quit drinking. Completely changed my life. But every year I have a condo with another friend in Eastern Washington on the Columbia River. And every year, 8 guys go over there for a guys' weekend. And when we go in, we go to the grocery store. They buy all the alcohol, and then we buy all the food. They split the alcohol 7 ways. They split the food 8, right?
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, when they were splitting it up, the alcohol was like $120 a person, and the food was like 30. So we get back to the condo, and they're all giving me a bad time. They're talking about how cheap I am because I don't pay for any alcohol. Of course, I don't drink. I said, well, let's figure this out, guys. I said, I quit drinking. At the time, it was 26 years ago.
Sure.
When I quit drinking, I was drinking $800 a month. I was spending $800 a month on alcohol in 1990.
Phew. That's a lot of drinks.
It's a lot of drinks. So I said, let's assume that, I curbed it a little bit and I just spent 500. 500 a month for 26 years came to like $186,000 that I'd saved. But if you compounded it out over those 26 years at 8% interest, $2.4 million.
That's incredible. And it's crazy because it's the smallest little things when you write it down in a journal.
Yeah.
If you write it down, you realize anything you want to change, you don't need this massive change. You don't need to stop. You just need to make progress every day.
Yeah.
And you could grow thousands of percent. You know Ellen Rohr pretty well, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
She and Gail flew out here. This is a couple of years ago now, but they really helped me get my financial quick check.
Yeah.
They helped me to get the reporting dialed in. So now my CFO is an amazing guy, but we've got every Friday, I know what's in the bank, how much money we owe to the debt. And see, I'm not a big fan. I'm a big fan of normal Americans living in no debt, but I'm a big fan of leverage when you're financially responsible. And I know Dave Ramsey's not, but I never really talked to Dave Ramsey ever really, but about credit cards. That I use credit cards all the time and I pay them off every month. And I literally over the years have made over $50 million of points. I don't pay for flights. I don't pay for hotels anymore. I fly all the people in to come train. What is your philosophy? I'm just curious on that.
The key word you said was responsible.
Yep.
That was the key word because so many people aren't responsible. If you can't pay your credit card off every month, cut it up, throw it away.
I agree with that. Like my buddy, I'll just tell you, my buddy Chad, I was not going to put his name out there, but he doesn't carry a credit card anymore. He doesn't. It's crazy what happens when people have a credit card. And I love credit cards and I love finance. We offer financing and I love it because people don't feel the pain when they're spending it. So they spend a lot more money.
Right.
I mean, the average ticket goes through the roof when you sell financing.
Yep.
And there's a delayed, they don't feel the money loss because they're like, I didn't earn this money. They don't feel it the same as a debit card or more is cash, actually taking cash out of your pocket and paying for it.
And very few people do that anymore.
Well,
I carry cash around with me all the time. I use cash a lot.
I think this is a good day for me because I actually have cash in my money.
You actually have cash, yeah.
But, a lot of stores aren't taking cash right now, which is crazy to me.
Yeah. Here's the other thing, Tommy, is 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
That's nuts.
And that was before COVID hit. That was before the pandemic. So,
if you write down, I did this one time, I wrote down everything I bought. I was in a class and the teacher said, listen, I want you guys to take a log. And it's amazing, like a candy bar and chips and lunch when you go out and the dinner. And it's like, if you go grocery shopping, and here's what's pretty cool is I'm involved in garage doors, as you know.
Yep.
And Amazon actually they've teamed up with Chamberlain, who's LiftMaster, who's got this app on your phone, MyQ, and you could open up your garage from your phone. Well, Amazon could open up one-time use and get a one-time code to open your garage to leave the Amazon Prime packages. Well, I'm like thinking down the road, Amazon's going to be delivering food into your garage on a regular basis. I mean, that's just where I see it going. But for me, that's pretty cool because, I eat out quite a bit. I got to tell you, it's probably not as good as I should be. But I mean, here I am with pita. I mean, it's healthy stuff most of the time. But I'm just curious, when it comes to what's your lowest point you've been at with financing? Obviously, it was pre-40. And then how'd you bounce back?
My lowest point was I was living in Southern California. So I went to work for Steve at 16. I worked for him till I graduated high school. And then at 21, I moved down to Southern California. When I moved down there, I moved down there simply to party, chase girls, and sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
I just worked to get by. And at one point, I had to borrow money from my mom to pay rent, or I would have been homeless.
Wow.
And then when Steve got a hold of me when I was down there and asked me to come back up and help him run a new company that he had started. And thank God he called me every month for 2 years to get me to come back up and help him run the company. And when he finally made me an offer to become an owner, I came back. So in January of 1990, I left Southern California. I had $300 in my pocket. I owed $500 on a 72 Chevelle, and I was a full-blown alcoholic at 24 years old. So, I mean, not being able to pay rent, having to borrow money from my mom, owing more money on my car than it was worth, and a full-blown alcoholic. I would say at 24 years old, that was pretty much rock bottom.
It sounds like it. It sounds like I'm really happy for you that you got out of the drinking train. It's I could probably lighten up myself. So what did you do? How do you bounce back from that? I mean, what are the first steps? What are the top 3 things you need to do? Obviously you quit drinking, but other than that, what did you do?
Number one was, quit drinking. No, and that was a personal choice of mine, that I was either going to be dead or in jail if I didn't. I had been in 2 car accidents I should have been killed in, a motorcycle accident I should have been killed in. I'd been arrested 3 times, all for alcohol by the time I was 24.
Wow.
So when I hit rock bottom there, not only was it rock bottom there, but it was rock bottom financial. And up until that point, even though I was struggling, I was that 76% living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have a nickel, 2 nickels to rub together. I still always was pretty responsible. I'd only been late on 1 payment my whole life, even though I was, not making money and I was living paycheck to paycheck. But when I came back to work for Steve and I sobered up, he handed me a book called The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, I think I have that on my shelf.
Yep. And I read that book, and the principles in that, somewhere on there, huh?
Yeah, well, then I got this one from Dave Ramsey.
Yep.
Everyday Millionaire. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. I always look at my bookshelf when I'm on these.
So, after reading that book, I adopted all those principles. And, there's 2 types of people when it comes to money. There's people that earn more to spend more, and there's people that save more than they earn.
Yep.
And I became one that I saved more than I earned. I learned to live on a budget. I learned to live below my means. And I learned the difference between wants and needs.
Interesting. I like that, wants and needs.
And when I'm teaching my classes, I really talk a lot about wants and needs. As I got married and had 2 daughters, and as they were growing up, my wife and I would have dinner at the dinner table 4 to 5 nights a week and discuss life at the dinner table with our daughters. And one thing I always taught them was the difference between wants and needs. And they'd always come to me, I want this, and I'd say, hold out your hand. And if they're watching this, they're gonna squirm. And I'd say, hold out your hand. I'd say, want one and crap in the other, and see which one fills up first.
Yeah. I
don't want to hear I want. Do you need it or do you want it? So when I'm doing my financial classes, I talk a lot about that. And if people, when they're walking into grocery stores, they're buying stuff, if they can just get that thought process of, do I want this or do I need it?
As I accumulate more and more things, Kelly, I don't like the filling almost. Yeah. It's like I drive a 2010 Nissan Titan, and I don't really, it's not nice enough that I have to worry about it. And as I buy these things more and more, it's just more and more things to worry about. Like once you have it, you're worried about losing it. So it's kind of comforting not going too deep in the pain on, I like the money to work for me. And I always have. And I've always been able to go out to eat and do things that I like. In fact, I always tell people I felt like I was successful the day I didn't have to look at the bill, which is probably not financially the best thing to give advice to do. But, I'm just curious. Obviously, it sounds like it was easy for you to become a millionaire once you learn these basic principles.
It's easy, but it takes discipline.
Discipline is a good word. I like
Yeah.
accountability, and I like the word discipline, and I like
Yep.
the word consistency.
Yeah. It takes that, and it's not going to happen overnight. And so my wife and I, we ended up buying Steve out in 2002, built her dream home in 2003, and by 2006 we had her home paid off and we're completely debt free.
Wow. Now, how big was that business?
When I bought him out, it was about a $2 million business. It's now about a $6 million business. And it's made a lot of transformations. When I bought him out, it was 85% new construction. Now it's 100% service and repair.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So a lot of different transformations there. But after we paid off our house, had him paid off, is when I looked, and that's when we were millionaires. And I had no idea, because it became about the journey instead of the destination.
Yep. I'm just thinking about, there's a word, it's called Parkinson's law. Are you familiar with Parkinson's law?
No, I'm not.
So Parkinson's law is the best way to describe it is toothpaste. When you're running out of toothpaste, you tend to roll it up and you just barely enough that you need. And when you got a full toothpaste, you're kind of lavish with it. You'll put it all over, kind of like when you get paid. Your payday comes and you go out to eat that night. You're taking your buddies out. You're covering everybody. And then the last day before payday, stuff's tight.
Yeah.
And same thing happens with a building. You rent out a building. It's a huge building. You're going to use all the space. And it's basically, they made a law back in long time ago. They call it Parkinson's law, that you'll use whatever you have.
Yeah.
I think Americans tend to live like that. They use, and business owners do the same thing.
Yeah.
Is they tend to say, I've got this money, where can I spend it?
Yep.
And they don't have the 3 months, 3 to 6 months. I mean, I bet you it's in the single digits how many companies have enough money to last 3 months if something, COVID didn't affect the home service as much as it affected a lot of other things like movie theaters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what do you say to these entrepreneurs that are struggling to become financially free?
Look at yourself first. Get your home in order. Get your personal finances in order. Learn how to budget. Learn how to save. Learn the difference between wants and needs.
I like wants versus needs. I got that written down. How long do you usually speak when you walk into if you were to come into, let's say, A1 or just do a Zoom, how long do you usually, is it like an hour of training, or how long does it usually go?
No, I have a 2-hour class I can do, or a 6-hour workshop.
And tell me about the 2-hour class versus the 6-hour workshop. I'm just curious.
The 6-hour workshop just is a lot more interactive. I mean, I am having people write down what their debt is. I'm having to acknowledge their debt, figure out, and then I'll work with them on how to get rid of that debt. We'll talk about wants and needs. There was a company I was working with in Atlanta, and I had a couple write down their debt, and they had $186,000 in credit card debt.
Oh.
So after talking to them and talking about wants and needs and habits, they were spending over $900 a month just going out to dinner.
$900 a month with 160 some odd $1,000 in debt, huh?
Yeah. So, you look at that habit, you look at the wants and needs there, and like you were saying earlier, you probably go out more than you should. I mean, people go out to lunch every day. You add that up opposed to I brought my lunch to work every day for 30 years. Now, were there times when I would go out to lunch? Certainly.
Sure.
But I would eat my lunch the next day, because I was one of those that likes leftover sandwiches. So, and I never wanted to waste it. But literally, I packed my lunch every day and brought it for 30 years. Think of the amount of money, because as I'm doing the class and I'm talking to people, usually it's about $15 to $20 per day that somebody is spending on lunch compared, let's just say, if they're spending $15 and they can make it for five, so $10 a day, average of 20 working days a month, that's $200 a month.
I mean, cigarettes, I do the same thing with cigarettes. I mean, you could do it with a lot
Yep.
of things.
A lot of things.
And
I
it's
had a
crazy.
I had a kid in Southern California. I was doing a class and he chewed tobacco. And when I figured out how much he was spending, he actually quit. I saw him a year later and he still was not chewing.
How do you, what, so I think the key word that you said earlier was discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's realizing first, it's admitting you've got a problem.
Yep.
Right. And it's
Yep.
money, but there's other things that stem out from the money, right? It's because you shop here, you do this. I just started getting pedicures.
Yeah.
And it's like expensive. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I hit an age where it just makes sense to treat myself, I guess. But that's, I do pretty well overall with the money I save. But what's the best way to build discipline? Do you have any tactics that really work to kind of just confront your obstacles and face them head on and stay tenacious about those?
Number one, like you said, is admitting it. It's just like when I quit drinking. I mean, I admitted I had a problem and I addressed it. And, the pain has to become a certain point. When you're talking in recovery and alcoholics and stuff, what's your rock bottom? And it's the same thing when it comes to finances. What's your rock bottom? It has to get to a point where you just say, you know what, I'm done with this. There's got to be a better path. And then reaching out and getting help. There's a lot of coaches out there that will help people and that have been there. The thing is it doesn't matter whether it's, alcohol recovery, drug addiction, financial issues, gambling, whatever. 99% of the people that are coaching and helping have been there.
Right.
So and they're willing to help. It's like myself. I mean, I love helping people get out of debt. I love showing them a better path. I have another client I'm working with right now that he called me yesterday morning and I got him on a payment plan. He was over $200,000 in debt, not including his homes. And he will have everything paid off in 18 months. But he calls me every time he pays off a credit card. And he's so excited now because I got him on a path. I got him now, instead of getting excitement out of going out and spending money, he's getting excitement of paying off debt. And that was one thing that my wife and I really enjoyed, building our family, building our wealth and doing everything is like I said, we sat down at a dinner table 4 to 5 nights a week as a family and discussed life. We discussed our dreams, what we wanted to accomplish as a family, for our girls, for ourselves, and everything. And everything we've discussed at that dinner table, we accomplished. My girls are 23 and 25 now. They both went to private universities. They both traveled the world. They're on their own now. They're very successful. But those are principles and those are dreams and goals that we talked about as a family. And that's one thing that happens is, families get in trouble. And I've had a lot of people in my local community contact me, either a wife or a husband or something, and say, hey, I'm in debt. And, I got us into debt and I need to figure out how to do this. And I'd say, well, let's get your spouse on the phone and let's talk about this. And they'd say, no, it's my debt. No, it's not. It's family debt. Doesn't matter who created it, it's family. If you can get together and talk as couples, families, open up, be honest about it, you're gonna recover and move a lot faster. It's the same thing with my business. When Steve was grooming me and mentoring me, he openly shared everything. Matter of fact, he passed away in excuse me a second. He passed away in May. And when he did, his son now is one of the owners who I actually ended up grooming and selling to. But I was talking to his son one day and he goes, yeah, mom just found out how much she was worth. And didn't realize that how much they were worth. And I said, oh, they were worth this. And he looked at me and he goes, what? I said, I told you, your dad and I shared everything.
Wow. Sorry to hear that, by the way.
Oh, thanks. So, till the day he died, I knew as much about his finances, actually more than his wife did. And it's the same thing with my partners. So I ended up selling out to Ole, which was his son, and then Brad, another gentleman that had been with me for 20 some years. They know everything about my finances. Not only personal, but business. Open, honest, and that's just the way we were. And people would say to him, why do you trust Kelly? Why do you follow him? Why do you listen to his vision? Why do you do that? They go, you know what? We trust him with our wife and our checkbook because we were open and honest.
With this financial quick check I do on Fridays, I have five other people on that call that know exactly every single detail. And quite honestly, I don't have anything to hide. I would show anybody of my staff. I bought a house recently and there's some issues with a lease that was previous. I won't go into it, but a lot of the employees said, a lot of the upper management said, you can't let anybody ever know it's a big house. It's a nice house.
Yeah.
And it's a good investment. I mean, I think I've got about 400,000 in equity just off the buy. Long story short, I said, what do you mean? I don't care if they see this. We've all worked hard. We could all share this house. We could all have fun here, but I have nothing to hide. If someone's jealous about a house I bought because I've worked hard my whole life, then they're probably not the right people. I don't know. I'm not afraid to share any of this stuff. And it's nice to be an open book and not have a separate set of books and deposit all the cash, which a lot of people don't do. And it's nice to just be honest. And, here's the deal. If I get audited, fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
You sleep at night, right?
Yeah, I sleep really good at night. If people got, I'm expensive. I do the job right.
Yeah.
And I've heard some really crappy, crummy garage door companies go, how do you sleep at night with what you charge? I said, sleep in a brand new bed. It's a great mattress, nice pillows. I sleep just fine because we charge enough to make 15 to 20%.
Yeah.
Which
all my employees can sleep well at night as well.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the deal. You could actually make money when you work for me. You could drive a new truck.
Yep.
You could actually get calls coming in because we pay for advertising. You actually could have nice things and give people PTO and give people health insurance. It's amazing what happens when you actually charge the right price.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies that aren't charging near what they should be.
Yep.
And most of them don't know how much they make. I've tried to buy out companies left and right, and I can't even get an honest financial. Like, they're still working on 2019.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is this possible? How do you even function? And they're like, well, I pay my wife. And I'm like, fine, whatever you got. Those are called ad backs. We could look into that.
Right.
And they're like, well, no one likes to pay Uncle Sam. I'm like, no, I understand that. And there's tax things you can do to avoid some of the stuff. I just found out about this law that in the 70s, you're familiar with the Augusta, the Masters.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 70s, they came up with, they like to rent out their house for like 14 days for the Masters program, but really, really wealthy people. And DC passed a new law that blocked it. And they went and they got a lot of money and wealth. So they were able to overturn the law. And I could rent out my house for equivalent per square foot of what I would do as a resort for 14 days. It's a write-off for the business.
Yeah.
And it's tax-free for me.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, we did a cost segregation study on the business. I mean, look, I like to pay taxes because the bank, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't pay a lot of taxes, for the most part, it's hard to get a loan. And we got a really, really nice building. It's about a $4 million building. We bought a couple apartment complexes, small ones for the guys to stay at when they're training. And if I had to wait to buy that with cash, I mean, I've already made lots and lots and lots and lots of money because it's gone up so much in the last couple of years. So I like leverage. And, there's a good book by, it's funny, Donald Trump, but he talks a lot about being able to leverage, but you're right. You got to be responsible.
Well, and here's the thing. I want to pay as much taxes as I can based on the tax laws.
Right.
You mentioned Donald Trump. Well, everybody's wanted him to open up his financials. Well, the reason he doesn't is he probably pays less taxes than we do based on the tax laws that were put in place by the politicians. The less the more irregular income you have, the less you're going to pay in taxes.
It's like Warren Buffett says, I pay less than my secretary.
Yeah.
I mean, as a percentage.
As a percentage. But those were laws that were put in by the politicians. They weren't put in by us. So, you know, if we just follow the law, and I sleep very well at night because I follow the law to a T when it comes to taxes and all that. And when I had the business, I never once put cash in my pocket. It always went into the business. And
Here's what
everything
people
ran
don't
through.
understand is you're going to get a multiple of every dime that goes into the business if you go to sell it. So if you're planning on selling in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to look at the last 3 to 5 years. They're going to come up with a multiple. And typically you're going to get anywhere from 3 to 15 times. So every dollar that goes in, if you can pull 10 out, you know, plus that money in the business could work in a lot more ways than it could work if you out there spending it.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, as you're putting it in your pocket, your employees see that. What do you think they're thinking? Well, if he can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah, you're right. That's a bad example. And that's, you know, that kind of segues into the leadership. I wanted to talk, you've taught a lot about leadership and accountability. What are some of the characteristics that you've noticed of really bad leaders? You know, and how do you fix those?
People that don't take responsibility. One of the best books I think I've ever read is called Extreme Leadership. It's by Jacko.
Jacko, yeah. Jacko.
Yeah, the 2 Navy SEALs.
Yep.
And you know, no matter what happens, it starts with us as leaders.
No matter what,
no
you've
matter
got
what,
to take blame. You can't say, well, this guy shouldn't have been driving like that. What kind of safety courses have you put into place?
Yep.
His whole theory of that book was, I send these guys into battle. That's life and death.
Yep.
That's true ownership, is when someone could lose their life.
Yep.
And the fact is, if you look at your decisions, I can't say anything. If I were to lose my business, I can't point at someone and just say it all comes down to me. And
it all comes down to us. And I'll tell you, the turning point in my life, every time I've had an issue in my life, starting with alcoholism, then, you know, I bought out Steve. Then I had some union issues. Then my wife passed away. Every time something happened, I turned the mirror on myself and said, what can I do to become a better person, a better husband, father, friend, boss, employer? And the more you can do that and turn it on yourself and take responsibility and take extreme ownership yourself and say, I'm going to become better, then your company will become better.
Yeah. I mean, the leaders that we have here day one, I think they accept a lot of the responsibility, but it's so easy to blame others.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say you shouldn't have been, you know, I've got cameras installed in every single truck that sees the driver as well as the road. Mm-hmm. And really it saves us a lot of money in our insurance, but it's not about trusting or not trusting the guys, but it sucks because it's got motion sensors. So every time a guy goes to smoke or grab a cell phone, we get notified.
Yeah.
And it's just like, guys, I'm not doing this to punish you, but how does it look when you drive by somebody? And I've driven by a very, very well-known HVAC company, and the guy's smoking it. It was just such a turnoff.
Yeah.
Look at, I don't know why, you know, my mom and dad both smoke. So now they're doing the vape stuff, but ultimately I just think it's, when you think about someone coming into your house, that's disgusting in my opinion.
Yeah. You know, the other mistake that I think a lot of owners make is they're afraid to let go. They're afraid to you know, number one, they don't have policies and procedures in place and operations manuals that say this is how it should be done at XYZ company. So, at CPI, the company that I owned and sold out, everything was about the CPI way. And there was nobody there that was bigger than the company. But, I let my managers run the company. I didn't micromanage them. And a lot of that was through different things that happened in my life where, I took a step back and went to work on myself because of different things that happened. And by doing that and taking a step back and working on myself, I was able to let them run the company and not micromanage them, but putting procedures in place to make sure that they knew how to run the company. Because the thing is as most owners, it's all sitting up here. Well, it doesn't do anybody any good when it's up here. Get it on paper and then learn to manage processes instead of people.
Yep. You know, that one person, I don't like to say if they get hit by a car, I like to say if they won the lottery, they're out. People think that by hiring this magical person, you're going to find success. And the real thing is it's the magical process that happens every single time to get the expected outcome that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And people say, man, you're so lucky to find these great people. I go, you should see the process that I use to find these people. I got over 500 applicants between Saturday and Sunday just for technicians.
Wow.
Now, you don't think I can find a few awesome people out of that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing the caliber of people if the process is dialed in. And, it's funny because I've got these lying around everywhere. Is my
your ops manual. Yep.
And so we've got our service, our apprentice, our technician, our install, our dispatch, our CSR. I mean, you're familiar with Al Levy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we talked about that. We had the same manuals.
It's pretty much probably the same stuff, and they work, and we read them all the time. And I never get sick of them, and I like to change them up. As I tell the employees, you're part of this manual. You've got give feedback if we could change the process in a way. You guys are in the every day.
Yep.
You're doing this stuff, so there's no one better to tell us what can we do better.
They're a working, breathing document.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're changing all the time.
They are.
And the thing is, the more you get it out of your head and get it on paper, then that's when your company is going to thrive. And that's when you're going to thrive as a leader.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to coach processes than it is people.
What are some systems that business leaders can set up to motivate their teams? And really, part of what I'm asking, I guess, is I find that you got to find out what employees want. What are their goals? And you've talked about this already, but matching up their business goals to get their personal goals. Like if they want to go on a trip with their wife to Alaska for their 20th honeymoon or whatever that looks like, 20th anniversary. I find that that's a big, big deal. Yeah. But what else can we do to kind of motivate the team and employees?
Well, I'll tell you, there was a book I read, and it's funny because, I kind of ran the company that way anyway. It was called The Dream Manager.
Yep.
And so many owners and managers want to set goals for people. Well, a lot of people are afraid of goals. They don't understand goals. They're scared of goals. So let's see what people are dreaming about. It's just like when my wife and I, like I said, we used to sit at that dinner table and we would talk about our dreams, what we wanted to accomplish as a family. And then we would break it down from there. So it's finding out what these employees want and then coaching and training.
Yeah, we do a lot of role play, but how much should we be thinking about teaching them, like you said, personal finance, personal goal setting, is there a formula that you like to use to say, because I get guys that come in and talk about home ownership and about fixing your credit. Right. And it's amazing what we're able to accomplish, but I've not had a good one about just financial freedom. That's why we hired the Dave Ramsey program, but I got to tell you, they don't want it. A lot of these, out of 250 people, 10 of them have logged in.
Because they don't understand it. It's too complicated. It's too high level for them. It's got to be broken down simpler. Again, 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Only 40% of Americans have $400, or excuse me, $1,000 or more saved for an emergency fund. So, if you look at your staff and you say only 4 out of 10 people have $1,000 saved for an emergency fund, but yet 76% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. So how can I help them learn the basics of financial literacy? Because like you said at the beginning, they don't teach this stuff in schools at all.
It's crazy.
And it comes, and you look at everything nowadays, like you're talking about Amazon, it's going to be dropping food in your garage and you're not even going to have to do anything. Do you think people are going to be spending more money than they should? Yeah. So are people making a grocery list for stuff they need? Do they live on a budget? Are they telling their money where to go every month, or is their money telling them where it's going to go every month?
I like that. That's interesting.
And when my wife and I, when we did a budget, it was on a yellow legal pad. It doesn't have to be complicated. They try and make things so complicated nowadays that people get frustrated.
I'd like to see a sample budget for someone, like a personal one. Maybe we can attach it to this podcast, but that's pretty interesting to me.
I have a basic electronic budget that I can send you
Yeah.
that is just really simple and easy, and I use it with my clients. And it's just to show them how you can set up the budget, and then how say you got $3,000 a month coming in and your budget's $2,500, so it leaves $500 to pay off debt. Then you can use that to pay off debt, and then I can show people how to do the snowball to be able to pay off debt quick.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how that works, because I think a lot of people, it's just a good feeling to be debt free. It's a good feeling to not owe a bunch of money. I mean, I could understand getting a loan on a house.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people that are, because you're making a lot. You're making a lot of equity as it grows in value, right?
Yeah. Well, and you talked about that principle earlier. I can't remember what that principle was you talked about.
Oh, the Parkinson's law.
The Parkinson's law. It's funny because when my wife and I were building our net worth and equity and everything, there's two types of people in a relationship when it comes to money. There's a nerd and there's a free spirit. Well, I was the nerd in the family. She was a free spirit. I would balance the checkbooks every month to the penny. She'd, go spend money and whatever. She wasn't frivolous, but the thing is she didn't balance everything every month. I did. But then I would sit down with her at the end of the month and I'd go over it and we'd discuss it. And that's the good part of having a relationship when it comes to relationship with money. And it's funny because we'd pay all the bills and we'd have, say, $400 left over until next pay period. Well, next pay period would roll around and get to the next pay period and she'd have $100 left. Well, then maybe the next one, she'd have $800 left over after paying the bills. Guess what? We get to the next pay period, there'd be $100 left. So it didn't matter how much she had, she would spend what was in there. So I was the one that would take every month and I'd put maybe $25 more away in savings and lower what was left for her to spend. And she never realized it because it was incrementally small, but then it added up.
What's your philosophy on husband and wife? Do you believe in a joint account, separate accounts? I see a lot of people separate accounts as they're getting married later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of being able to go do something for somebody and then not see it on the credit card statement, like if flowers or whatever, if it pops
Mm-hmm.
up. But what is your philosophy on that?
My philosophy is there's power in numbers. If you work together and you communicate, doesn't mean you can't have separate accounts, but then you have individual accounts too.
Right.
So our individual accounts and joint accounts. And that's what we did is we had both. So we had our main house account, and she had an account, I had mine. And we budgeted ourselves. Here's what we're going to get in our personal accounts each month, but everything else is going in the house account. So that's the key, is the budget. Is okay, you get $100 this month to spend on whatever.
I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that budget. We've got a really, really, really nice budget for A1 here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so decked out, and it's huge. I mean, we live and die and breathe by this budget, but I used to think a budget would confine me, but I have a feeling this next year I have a plan to hit it out of the park. And I mean, I'm going to be super aggressive on growth. But the one thing I've learned to focus on more is profit. Forget the revenue. Everybody brags on revenue.
Yeah,
They
who cares?
never brag about EBITDA or profit.
Yeah.
Why is that? No one will ever brag that I make 15, 20, 30%, whatever that might be. They brag about the revenue, and they got nothing to show. Their CPA says, hey, you're going to owe 800,000. And they go, I don't have, how?
Yeah. I mean, my company never did more than $6 million. Ever. But we never dropped below 10% net profit either.
Like 10% of 6 million is $600,000. It's not a bad number.
Not a bad number. When you consider that was after salaries.
Yeah.
For owners, officers, managers, everybody.
Right. So you paid yourself, which is smart.
Yep.
And then you got so you pay yourself. And I gave myself a raise 2 months ago. Adam called me up and he said, hey, he goes, you're the only person that has got a raise since I started here.
Yeah.
I said, all right, what do you think? He goes, what do you think? 40, 50, 60,000. I said, 50 sounds about right. There was no rhyme or rhythm to it, but talk to me a little bit about Never Buy the Book. What are readers going to get out of the book of yours?
Hope and inspiration. Never Buy the Book is kind of a story of my life, what I've been through, how I got through it. People that have helped me along the way, people that have guided me, different things I'd been through. So as I started speaking and talking about the financial classes and traveling around, I had people starting to say, hey, you should write a book. And I was like, yeah, sure. Well, then my wife passed away unexpectedly in 2012, right after we got done with the union issue in the company. So 2008, when the economy crashed, my company got hit with a $544,000 pension liability notice.
Oh.
So that year we went from 6 million to 3 million, then got hit with a $500,000 pension liability notice. So we came up with a plan. That's when I actually read the E-Myth from Michael Gerber and really changed the company and really dove in and started working on the company instead of in the company. And we came up with a plan. We ended up paying the union. We had 3 years to pay the union off. We ended up paying them off in 2 years. So I paid them off in June of 2012. Then in September of that year, my wife passed away unexpectedly. So 2014, I'm traveling, talking about the financial classes, but also some friends and I decided to do a hike in the local community. And as we got ready to do it, the local hospital asked if we would use it to do a fundraiser for the local cardiac rehabilitation center. And as that started going, then the director of the hospital asked if I would name the cardiac rehabilitation center after my wife. So we committed to raise $100,000 over 5 years. Well, in order to do that, started going around to local service clubs and different things and telling my story of what I'd been through, how I'd gotten through it, to raise money for the cardiac rehabilitation center. And there again, everybody was asking me, where's your book? Where's your book? Where's your book? So as I'm traveling around doing these things, and so in 2014, 14, I started thinking about it, and I actually interviewed my mom. And because the book starts, I wasn't supposed to be born, so I just gave away the first chapter. I wasn't supposed to be born. But then in 2018, when I sold the company and I stepped away, I was coaching a client down in San Clemente, California, and I was going down to help him with the planning and strategy meeting. And I told him I didn't want to do it on site. We're going to do it off site. So we left his place early in the morning. We started heading up Pacific Coast Highway. And then we turned and we start going up Laguna Canyon. And I got this sensation that came over me, and I was like, wow, what is going on here? And we pull into this place, and we get out, and I'm kind of standing there. I'm dazed, and he comes up and he goes, "What's wrong?" I go, "I don't know." I go, "I just had this sensation come over me. I can't explain." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, 29 years ago, I left this canyon. I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. And I said I'd never come back here. A week later, I started writing the book. And I had it done in a month and a half, pen to paper.
Wow, I got goosebumps. That's a good sign. That's a good story.
So, going from leaving that canyon to 29 years later, back there coaching him on what I had learned in those 29 years. And with everybody telling me, you should write the book, you should write the book. Everything came full circle, and it's like, okay, it's time. And, it's my time to give back. I had a lot of people help me along the way, coach me, teach me, guide me. And it's my turn to share and to give back and do the same thing. And, the way I look at it is with the book, and now I'm doing the podcast as well. If I can help one person, whether it be financial, addiction, business, personal, whatever it is, if I can help one person, it's worth it.
So are you able to do your workshop from Zoom now with COVID and everything?
I haven't. And I've talked about doing it with my publicist. I've talked about with some people that I've done the class for. So my brother runs a bunch of car dealers down in Florida, and I went down and did a bunch for him. And we talked about it. And because when I do my workshop, I use my personal story.
Yep.
So it's very personal. It hits people. Even when I was doing it with the car dealers, even though, it's more white collar, it still hit home with a lot of people. When I do it in home service industries, where, that's where I cut my teeth.
Yep.
It's pretty easy for people to relate with me.
Sure.
And it's pretty interactive. So I already got a class scheduled for November 7th. I'll be going to Colorado and doing one there, and that's been scheduled for a while. So I'm hoping now that people are starting to get over the fear mongering and all the hype and everything, and COVID's starting to subside. That
November 4th is when it's supposed to be over.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going November 7th.
Yeah, we should be good.
Yeah.
So you brought up some books. I definitely think Dream Manager is an important one. A couple questions here. First, someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way?
KellySchols.com.
KellySchols.com.
And that's KELLYSCHOLS.com.
And then you've got your book, Never Buy the Book.
Never Buy the Book.
That's not B-U-Y. That's
No.
B-Y.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't want people to buy it.
Never buy the book. Yeah. And
it just means I didn't do things by the book.
Yep, I gotcha. And then so I always ask, is there a few books that you'd really top of your list that you'd recommend? The E-Myth I hear a lot. Are there three other books that you said the one by
The Millionaire Next Door.
Millionaire Next Door. There's another one called The Wealthy Barber that's pretty good. But what is the one that you said by Leadership?
Extreme Leadership.
Extreme Leadership. Yep.
I'll tell you another really good one, and Kenny, and you've had Kenny on.
Kenny Chapman.
Yep. The 6 Dimensions of Change. and that's more personal development.
Does he got that on Audible?
He just re-released the 6 Dimensions of Change version 2.
Okay.
But his original is an amazing book.
And one thing I always ask is basically to close this out, you know, there's a lot of people that love the idea of hearing financial freedom, but they never take action. They never follow the steps they need to hit that spot of just literally the weight that must feel like. I'm very, very fortunate. I never got into a debt. I got into a little bit for school, but you know, my master's program, I had that paid off within a year. So I just can't imagine the weight, but I just am curious, what are some, I want you to just take us home, whatever you want to talk about, whatever we might have not got to. I'll let you, give you at least 5 minutes to kind of talk about really what these listeners can do to find change in their life and hopefully make it a much brighter future.
Number one, they need to realize with finance is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I'm going to go back to a couple things I talked about earlier is, there's 2 types of people when it comes to money. There's people that save more than they earn, and there's people that earn more to spend more. You're never going to earn enough if that's the type of person you are. And then it comes to wants and needs. If I pay attention to my wants now, I can have, or if I pay attention to my needs now, I can have what I want later. And I'm to that point in my life. If I want something, I can go get it. But
are you buying things that you want now more lavishly or not really?
Not really. I'm not a lavish person, but if I want to go on a trip, I go on a trip. If I want to do something for my daughters, I do something for my daughters. My youngest daughter's 23 years old. She lives in Nashville. I bought a brand new house there and then turned around and sold it to her on contract. So she's buying her first house. People will say, well, you're giving her a good deal. You're this, you're that. No, I'm not. She's paying 4.75% interest, but she was able to buy a house because I was able to do that for her.
Sure.
Both my girls went to private college. They traveled the world. Those were things that I was able to do for them before they had to go out and face the real world. But again, it was, my ex-partner used to tell us all the time, rice and beans, boys. And, if you think like that, if you think about wants and needs, eventually you can do whatever you want. But again, it takes discipline. It takes, passing up that shiny object to live. There's a quote I like to talk about, and that's live for today, but plan for the future. Because if you just live for today and you don't plan for the future comes pretty fast.
It does.
I mean,
and it only gets quicker.
It does. It only gets quicker. And, it's amazing. I actually have a call with a gentleman tomorrow for some financial coaching that's 62 years old.
I think it was Napoleon Hill. Don't quote me on that, but he said most men die when they're 25, but they get buried when they're 80.
Yeah.
Because it just falls into this vicious cycle of a rhythm.
Yep.
And I think the biggest thing that slows down time, I remember just the days lasting forever when I was a kid. And if you think about it, I'd wake up, my grandma would cook breakfast, I'd watch a show, I'd talk to my dad, we'd go work out in the basement. This is before I even walked to my buddy's house, watched him get ready, get on the bus. Then I had 8 different courses or whatever. Then the night dinner, grandma, mom, dad, catch up, go play. It's just because it was never the same. And it never, you're always changing classes and quarters and everything. So I think that's my goal, is to continue to change so fast and so much that I never get in a rhythm of just, because boom, before you know it, holy crap, it's already September.
Yeah. And and here's the thing is enjoy the journey.
Yep.
So many people are striving, you know, to want this or want that, or, what's the next best thing? A really good friend of mine, he's done very well for himself as well. And, he's a multimillionaire. He's a pharmacist, does really well, owns his own company, and pretty much works when he wants now. But it's funny because when him and I talk and we talk about where we're at and stuff, it always goes back to the younger years when the kids were little and, we were camping in the old beat up trailers and, we were, we used to lawnmower race. We'd take riding lawnmowers and soup them up and race them. And, it was the camping trips and that stuff. It wasn't the 5-star vacations because we didn't do that stuff when we were younger.
Yeah.
And then we talk about, what we have now. And, you said it earlier, it seems like the more you accumulate, the more headaches you get.
Now I'm on everybody's radar. It's like
Yeah.
I've got 5 lawsuits. I mean, 5 lawyers, and I'm like, man.
Yeah.
And then I got to set a precedence that if you come after me, I'm going to take. I'm sorry, but there's. I mean, the case I'm in right now, and I'm like, you brought this on yourself,
Right.
because if you don't think, I, I'm on like a speed dial with my lawyers. It's not fun, but you know what? I understand. Lawyers have this philosophy of just you don't sue somebody that doesn't have money. It's not even worth it. You go after insurance money if you could.
Yep.
But there's more plaintiffs attorney in Southern California than the rest of the country combined. So it's really, I love California. It's a beautiful state. It's just really tough to do business there. And I mean,
It's regulated like crazy. Yeah. I think the two toughest states to do business are California and where I'm at in Washington State.
yeah, we're actually in Vancouver now, Portland
Oh,
area.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We're looking to get up in that area, but it's tough. Illinois is pretty tough. New York's
Yeah.
pretty tough. Places I love to do business, and I'm going to go into these states here soon. It's Florida, Texas. The Dakotas are really good. There's some really really good states that are advantageous
Yeah.
for business owners. What are your thoughts? Real quick, last question. What are your thoughts on unions anyway?
They're a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
No. Unions can be a good thing. What happened with us was in 2008 when the economy crashed, they hadn't settled the contract expired in May. They hadn't settled it. So it was the 1st of August. And by then they wouldn't settle the contract. And the business administrator kept telling me, once we settle it, you have to retro pay back to June 1st. And I just said, I can't run my business that way. So we dropped out. It was a year later is when I got the pension liability notice. That was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in business. Was getting that $544,000 pension liability notice, because it made me sit down, look at myself as a business owner and look at the company and learn how to run a company correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And, it's funny because up until about a year before I sold out, I always said, I can't wait for the union to come in here and say something to me. And that day happened about 6 months before I sold out. The original organizer who organized us and got us into the union came in, and I hadn't seen him in years. And he came in to apologize to me because they were going to start a residential program and apprentice training program for service and all that, and they never ended up doing it. The local union up here is basically pipe fitters because of the refineries.
Mm-hmm.
So he came in to apologize about that. And I said, well, what about the pension liability? He's like, what do you mean? He'd never heard about it. He actually had retired and went on to do something else. And he never heard about what happened with the pension liability. And I said, well, Gary, I said, I've been waiting for somebody from the union to walk in here for the last, 10, 12, 8 years, whatever it was. And I go, first of all, I want you to go back and I want to tell all of them, thank you for what they did. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, you guys made me look at myself as a business owner, as a person, as a leader, and you made me learn how to run a company correctly. And I said, then you can tell them don't ever step foot in this building again.
Yeah. That's great.
So,
Well,
you know,
Kelly, this is good stuff, man. I'll tell you what, we don't talk enough about finances. And when we do, it's usually CPAs
yeah,
and accounting firms coming on. It's not teaching personal finance. So I'm going to talk to Bree here in a minute and figure out what we could get planned to get you out here. And I'd imagine that I've got some good buddies in a lot of different businesses here that would probably love to get them involved.
yeah.
So,
And when I come out and do a class like that for you, if I was to come out and do it for you guys,
yeah.
one thing I require or I recommend is you do it after hours or on weekends. So any employee can bring their spouse.
Yep. I agree with that.
Okay. And then I give anybody at the class a free half an hour consultation
Oh, cool.
on their personal stuff.
Wow. See, I have 250 now, a little over 250 employees. And yeah, I think Sean at Fort Energy, my buddy Austin at Moxie. I mean, I could probably keep you busy, but I'll reach out, and I can't tell you enough how much it means to come on. And I learned a lot. I got a lot of good notes. So I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So I'll be reaching out here today for you.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks. And thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate you.
Thanks everyone.
All right. See you later, Kelly. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.